I'm Dr. Dan Stokes, and in today's episode we are going to explore the real science of Predator's invisibility cloaking. The Predator isn't just a sci-fi creature, it's a walking demonstration of one of the most captivating technologies ever imagined, the invisibility cloak. A highly advanced alien material that bends light, distorts vision, and turns a 2-meter tall hunter into a shimmering mirage in the trees. What makes it so compelling is this. Of all of the invisibility systems seen in movies, Predator's cloak is one of the most accidentally realistic. Its flaws look like real physics. Its distortions look like real optical failures. Its reveal moments when rain, water, mud, or sparks expose the outline, matching exactly what real engineering would struggle with. In this episode, we dive into the real science behind this iconic piece of sci-fi tech, from optics to metamaterials, from thermal cloaking to active camouflage, and we will touch upon other invisibilities as well, such as Harry Potter's cloak, and what that surprisingly gets wrong and surprisingly right. By the end, you'll know exactly how close we are to building a Predator-style invisibility cloaking system, and how far we still have to go. So let's get started. The first time you see the Predator, you don't see a monster, you see a distortion. The jungle behind it ripples, refracts, and wobbles like heat above a bonfire. Leaves bending strangely. Background smearing and shimmering. The outline is there, but not quite. You see something, your brain knows something is wrong, but you can't quite process it quickly enough to react. This effect isn't random movie magic, it's incredibly close to what a real physical invisibility system would actually produce. Real cloaking would never look like perfect transparency. It would look smeared, glitchy, angle-dependent, and full of optical tells. Perfect invisibility is almost impossible. Imperfect invisibility, distortion-based camouflage, is absolutely achievable. Predator's cloak sits right in that sweet spot where it feels advanced, but not outright magical. Across the Predator films, the cloak behaves like a combination of optical illusions and technological constraints. It accomplishes 3 main effects that are worth dissecting. The first, visible light refraction. The Predator bends light so that the background wraps around it, but the bending isn't clean. It creates ripples and warping, especially around the edges of its body and equipment. This is exactly what we'd expect from a flexible, light-redirecting surface that has to move, stretch, and flex around a living being. Second, environmental sensitivity. Water ruins it. Rain exposes it. Mud sticks to it and destroys the illusion. Fire, light, and sparks reveal its outline instantly. Every real cloaking prototype humanity has created so far fails for the same reasons. Anything that disrupts the surface, droplets, dust, scratches, dirt, breaks the effect and makes the distortion painfully obvious. And thirdly, imperfect thermal cloaking. Sometimes the Predator hides perfectly from IR vision, other times its heat signature leaks, or it has to manually adjust its tech to see human heat signatures. This variable performance is exactly what you'd expect from thermal masking that is good but not perfect. In other words, Predator's cloak behaves like an advanced but physically constrained system, not like magic. That's why it feels so strangely believable. To understand why invisibility is so difficult, you have to understand what the light is doing. Visible light has wavelengths of around 400 to 700 nanometers. Infrared wavelengths 10 to 50 times longer. Radar can be thousands of times longer still. These different wavelengths interact with materials in completely different waves. To become invisible, you must either bend light around yourself or recreate the background perfectly. The first approach is the metamaterial route. You reshape the path of light so it flows around you like water around a rock, and then combines on the other side as if nothing were there. The second is active camouflage. You wear a suit of tiny screens that display whatever is behind you so the observer sees a fake version of reality. Both of these routes are incredibly hard because of a number of reasons. The first, observers can be anywhere. A cloaking that works from just one angle will fail from another. Light arrives from every direction, not just from straight ahead. Environments are complex and dynamic. Shadows, reflectings, dust, fog, foliage, and rain all interact with your cloaking system. A living body emits heat that must be dumped somewhere, and that heat shows up clearly in infrared. The cloaking has to flex and move without breaking its carefully engineered optical properties. Any delay between sensing the world and displaying the correct image gives you away. In short, invisibility means wrestling dozens of fundamental constraints at once. Predator's shimmering distortion is the perfect compromise between physical realism and cinematic drama. Before we talk more about technology, nature has already several examples of invisibility cloaking. Octopuses, squid, and cuttlefish are basically biological invisibility prototypes. Their skin contains chromatophores, pigment sacs that expand and contract to shift colour and pattern, iridophores that reflect light like tiny mirrors, lucifores that help match ambient brightness, and papillae, muscles that change the physical texture of the skin from smooth to spiky or rock-like. A cuttlefish can mimic rocks, coral, sand ripples, and even the play of sunlight on shallow water in less than half a second. It doesn't become invisible in a technical sense, but it becomes very hard to distinguish from its surroundings. These natural creatures show us that adaptive visual disguise works, can be extremely effective, and doesn't require breaking physics. Predator's cloak feels like an advanced alien technology extending this natural logic from camouflage into near invisibility. Whereas the cephalopods change pigments and textures, the Predator appears to change how light itself flows around its body. Now let's talk metamaterials. Metamaterials are engineered materials with internal structures smaller than the wavelength of light they are meant to control. By carefully designing these structures, scientists can force waves to do bizarre things, bend backwards, slow down, or wrap around an object. This is the basis of transformation optics. If you can mathematically describe how you want a light to flow through space, say around a region you want to hide, you can, in principle, design a metamaterial that makes light behave that way. Scientists doing this have already demonstrated cloaks that can hide objects from microwaves, nanostructured surfaces that conceal tiny bumps on mirrors at visible wavelengths, meta-surfaces that bend and twist light in astonishing ways. However, real metamaterial cloaks have some brutal limitations. They usually only work at a single frequency, or at least at a very narrow band. They are extremely angle dependent. Move your head slightly and the cloak fails. They are rigid and fragile, not flexible. They only operate on tiny scales currently, millimeters to a few centimeters, and they are exquisitely sensitive to imperfections in fabrication. Scaling them to cloak a moving human, or alien, body is far beyond our current engineering today. The physics works, the manufacturing does not, at least not yet. Predator's cloak appears to be a flexible metamaterial, something built by a civilization vastly ahead of ours. It's not a crazy idea, it's just far beyond our current capabilities. If metamaterials are the pure physics path to invisibility, then active camouflage is the engineer's path. Active camouflage doesn't really bend light, it fakes the background. Imagine a suit covered in thousands or millions of tiny displays, micro LEDs. Each tile is linked to cameras that capture what is behind you from various angles. A processor takes all that information and decides what colour each tile should show, so that from the viewer's perspective you blend into the background. This isn't pure sci-fi, elements of it already exist. BAE Systems' adaptive technology, for example, uses hexagonal tiles that can be heated or cooled to mimic the thermal background. To an infrared camera, a tank equipped with adaptive tiles can look like a car, a wall, or almost disappear entirely. Researchers have also built visible light active camouflage demonstrations using projectors and screens. One famous demo showed a person wearing a cloak that, when viewed from one angle, seemed see-through. The scenery behind them was projected onto the cloak in real time. The limitations of this are exactly what you'd expect. Parallax, the effect only works properly from specific viewpoints. Move to the side and then the illusion collapses. Latency, there's always a time delay between sensing and displaying. Fast movement creates a shimmering, glitchy outline that looks uncannily like the Predator in motion. Resolution. To fool the human eye at close range, the pixels must be very small and very dense. Power consumption. All these cameras and displays and processors burn a lot of energy. Heat. All of that electronics will itself generate heat, which makes you more visible in infrared, unless you add some cooling systems. Active camouflage naturally produces exactly the kind of distortion, shimmer and heat-haze that we see in the Predator films. In many ways, it is the technology that most closely matches what we see on screen. If hiding in visible light is difficult, hiding in infrared is brutally hard. Humans emit on the order of 100 watts of heat simply by existing. That heat radiates in the infrared, and modern thermal cameras are very good at detecting small temperature differences. To hide from infrared, a suit would need to absorb and distribute body heat, actively cool parts of its surface, and generate fake heat signatures that blend into the background. Researchers have designed so-called thermal cloaks that can guide heat around an object, a bit like a metamaterial guides light, but these systems are rigid, small, and work only under carefully controlled conditions. On a moving, flexible, sweating human body, thermal cloaking becomes an enormous engineering challenge. Every step, every breath, every change in posture changes the heat flow and the surface temperature. This is why the Predator's heat signature sometimes leaks through the cloak in the films. Real thermal invisibility would be inconsistent, patchy and unstable, exactly as shown. Let's be unfair to ourselves and generous to the technology. Let's imagine we are tasked with building a functional, Predator-style cloak using the best technology we could plausibly develop and use in the next couple of decades. Our design might look something like the following. An outer shell consisting of a flexible mesh of micro-LED tiles, each around 0.5 millimetre to 2 millimetres across, capable of displaying colour at high frame rates. We'd need a sensor network of hundreds of micro cameras and depth sensors dotted around the suit and helmet, feeding data into a central processor. That processing core would probably be a compact GPU or dedicated neural accelerator, constantly constructing a 3D model of the world and rendering the missing background onto the suit in real time. It'd need a thermal layer consisting of a grid of thermoelectric Peltier modules, or liquid-cooled channels, that can vary the surface temperature pattern to match the surroundings and disrupt IR detection. All this would need a power supply, a battery pack with energy comparable to a small e-bike, maybe 500 to 1,000 watt-hours, providing an hour or two of full operation before needing a recharge. A cooling system, pumps, radiators or phase change materials to keep all of these electronics and the wearer at survivable temperatures. The total weight of this system is likely to be realistically 25 to 40 kilos, once you include armour, batteries, thermal systems and structural support. The performance, probably convincing at a distance, especially in low light or cluttered environments, reasonably effective against human vision and some cameras from limited angles, vulnerable to close inspection, multispectral sensors, rain, mud, fog and dust. Not Hollywood invisibility, but tactically terrifying all the same. Let's deviate briefly into another universe for a minute. Harry Potter. In Harry Potter, the cloak of invisibility is perfect. It works in full daylight from every angle, on every observer, against magic and non-magic alike. It doesn't shimmer, glitch or distort. It doesn't care about dust, rain or mud. You can bundle it up, sit on it, run it. The visibility is absolute. If you tried to explain that scientifically, you say it behaves like a perfect metamaterial cloak operating across the entire electromagnetic spectrum, with no losses, no scattering and no heat emission. In reality, this is impossible. A cloak that bends all wavelengths perfectly around a human body, whilst allowing that body to stay alive and warm, would run into fundamental thermodynamic and information theoretic limits. You cannot hide both your physical presence and all traces of your waste heat forever, without dumping that energy somewhere detectable. This is why scientists sometimes jokingly refer to metamaterial cloaks as Harry Potter cloaks in the press. They are chasing the dream of something that behaves like that, but at the moment only on tiny scales and in very constrained conditions. The Predator's cloak, by contrast, looks far more like advanced engineering. It fails in the rain, it struggles with movement, it leaks heat, it produces visual artifacts and distortions, and it appears to have a finite operating time which can overload. In other words, Harry Potter's cloak is magic. Predator's cloak is engineering. One ignores physics, the other bends it as far as it will go, then shows us the cracks. So how close are we to a Predator-level cloaking in the real world today? In the next 5 to 10 years, we can expect to see more advanced active camouflage for vehicles and perhaps partial systems for soldiers, things that break up outlines, alter thermal signatures, and confuse simple sensors. In 10 to 20 years, it's plausible we could build wearable suits that offer limited angle, limited duration active camouflage in visible light, especially for specialised roles such as snipers or reconnaissance units. These wouldn't make someone vanish, but they would make detection much harder. In 20 to 50 years, if metamaterial fabrication and flexible electronics continue to advance, we might start seeing hybrid systems, fabrics that both manipulate light and display process backgrounds, combining passive and active approaches. But perfect invisibility, the kind where you can stand in the middle of a brightly lit room and be completely unseen from all angles and all sensors, is very unlikely. Physics is too unforgiving. Predator's cloak is an inspired infusion of cephalopod biology, metamaterial physics, active optical camouflage, thermal masking, and speculative alien manufacturing. It's flawed, it's glitchy, it's angle dependent, it's vulnerable to rain, mud, water, fog, light and heat. And because of those imperfections, it feels real. It behaves like something that could plausibly exist within the next century if a very determined and well-funded civilization decided to build it. Harry Potter's cloak, by comparison, is pure fantasy. Beautiful, iconic, but firmly on the magic side of the line. We may never disappear completely, but shimmering partial invisibility, the kind you can miss if you blink, is absolutely within range. And if you ever see the air ripple in the trees for just a moment, and you're not quite sure why, well, maybe it's just a trick of the light, or maybe the science of sci-fi has gone further than you thought. I'm Dr. Dan Stokes, and this has been the Real Science of Sci-Fi. Subscribe if you liked.